Well, good morning. I'm Martin Tyner, and my beautiful wife Susan is taking this little video. We're on the road heading toward the north rim of the Grand Canyon. We just passed the 7,000 foot mark and got a little snow outside. And where we're going actually is we're heading to Lee's Ferry, Arizona. And you go up over the mountain to Jacobs Lake and in the north rim, and then down into Arizona. It's absolutely beautiful up here. We're going to do one of my bird of prey programs with my wildlife ambassadors, Scout the Golden Eagle, Helen the Peregrine Falcon, and Belle the Harris Hawk. It's a part of the BLM's Winter Bird Count Festival that they like to do, and I've done programs for them in the past. Of course, unfortunately, it's December, and you know it's snowy and cold, and quite often this road is impassable. But we're supposed to get a snowstorm coming in this evening, and I'm kind of hoping we can sneak past, get down, do the program, and then come back up over the mountain before it snows, and then get back to Utah. It's about 200 miles from Cedar City to this show, but it's really beautiful. You know, we're up in the Ponderosa Pines here. It's just a gorgeous drive up here to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Unfortunately, we won't actually see the Grand Canyon. We'd have to go a little bit further down the road to actually look over the Grand Canyon, but we do get some beautiful views of the Ponderosa Pine Forest, and then also as we drop down towards Lee's Ferry and the Colorado River, you will see some just spectacular red Navajo Sandstone mountains. It's really quite beautiful. Of course, with the cloud cover that we've got here today, I'm not sure how much we're going to see. But that's kind of what we're doing. We're just driving along with the critters, heading for Arizona to do one of our wildlife programs, and we'll take a few more videos of the road here as we go. So we'll talk to you later.
The critters boxes in the back. Scouts way back. This one's divided in two for the hawk and the falcon.
Okay, we're just about to the junction. This is the Jacobs Lake area, which is basically camping. It's national forest. It's a beautiful place to go camping. And there's a little restaurant and a gas station. And that's about it. And if we go straight, we head to the Grand Canyon. But if we go to the left, we will head toward the Colorado River.
That's Jacobs Lake right there.
Yeah, that's the Jacobs Lake Junction Visitor Center, those kinds of things. And you can see Marble Canyon, 44 miles. That's pretty much where we're headed toward, is Marble Canyon and the Lee's Ferry area. Lee's Ferry is kind of interesting in that when the pioneers were coming west, they had to find a way to cross the Colorado River to continue west, and they found a very, very precarious, dangerous trail that went down to the bottom of the cliffs by the Colorado River, and then a guy named James D. Lee, I believe, built a ferry that kind of a little barge that you would stretch a rope across the Colorado River and pull the barge by hand back and forth across the river to bring wagon and livestock and supplies across the Colorado River. So that's where it became known as Lee's Ferry, because it had a little rope pulled ferry that would drag supplies across the Colorado. And it's a neat spot, and both Marble Canyon and Lee's Ferry is a great place if you want to go watching for condors. They've been releasing the condors out there, and the condors hang out there pretty much year-round. In fact, at the Lee's Ferry Bridge, which spans the Colorado River, the condors are quite well known for just sitting on the bridge and watching the traffic drive by. So if you ever would like to come and do some condor watching, the Marble Canyon, Lee's Ferry area is a great place to do that. So again, ponderosa pines, got a little snow, the roads are at least dry at the moment, and we're hoping to not only get down to the Lee's Ferry recreation area to do my program, but we're hoping that we can get back before it snows, because it's supposed to snow tonight, so that we don't end up stuck up here on the mountain. Oh, just fair warning everyone, if you ever decide to come up here in the wintertime like this, be very, very careful. When it snows here, this road oftentimes does not get plowed and does not get traveled on by, you know, highway patrol or sheriff's departments or anybody. And so if you end up driving up here and getting stuck in a snowstorm, you might be stuck up here for a few days until the state road decides to get a snowplow up here and clear the road. So be very, very much aware of the weather. It's tremendously important when you're driving these high mountain roads, especially in the wintertime. Well, things have changed dramatically in the last couple of miles. We're now down below 7,000 feet, and we've gone from the big ponderosa pines forest down to the what we call PJ or pinyon juniper forest, and these are our lower mountain type forest habitats. The trees are, you can see around me, they're quite thick, and the snow's almost gone. So we're having a good time dropping down into the lower elevations, and very soon we're going to pop out to one of the most beautiful scenic overlooks that you will ever see, that looks out over the valley below. That'll probably be another couple of minutes or so, but these PJ forests are really quite interesting. They are where you get pine nuts from. And so we don't get the pine nuts up in the ponderosa pine forest. You get the pine nuts in these smaller pinyon pine trees. And so a lot of people will come up during the fall and pick up the pine nuts off the ground underneath these pinyon pine trees, and they'll lightly roast them and package them, and we have a lot of people sell them here in the southern Utah, northern Arizona area, raise a little extra Christmas money. And it's a major food source for the wildlife. The deer eat a lot of pine nuts to help get them through the winter. It's really, really good protein. And the native people found it to be the same way. They would certainly collect the pine nuts in the fall so that they'd have food through the winter time. So it's kind of a rich environment here. You know, people think, you know, up on top of the mountain, the big ponderosa pine forest, it's teeming with wildlife, and there certainly is a lot of wildlife there, but there is actually significantly more wildlife found in these lower pinyon or PJ forest areas. So we have, you know, a lot more deer, and we get antelope, and we get foxes and coyotes and bobcats and cougars, and a lot of really, really interesting wildlife. That there's just a much larger food base in these lower areas for these animals to consume, and it's not quite as bad as being down on the desert floor where it gets so hot. So this is not quite as cold as the top of the mountain and not quite as hot as down the valley. So this is actually a really neat ecosystem that we have here in northern Arizona and southern Utah and southern Nevada. And I'm just starting to see out. We're going to come around a corner here shortly, and hopefully you'll be able to see how beautiful this scenery is out here in the red Navajo Sandstone cliffs. So why don't you go show them the view, Sue?
Some sun and some clouds.
Yeah, it's
very beautiful.
A little bit cloudy. Over to our left, you can see the sun's on the red Navajo, so you can see how nice and bright it is out there in the valley. We've got a lot of clouds overhead that's kind of blocking the sun. I don't know if this really shows up well on the little video camera, but this is just an amazing scenic view. You can see for miles and miles, literally all the way to the Colorado River, though the Colorado River is down below the valley here, so you actually don't see the river. And I've had the good fortune of flying an airplane over all of this scenic wonder, and it's just beyond breathtaking. Lots of turnouts here, you know, where you can pull over and look at the view and enjoy the view. And of course, my recommendation with the direction that these cliffs are facing, if you ever get a chance to come out here in the late afternoons, the late afternoons when the sun is shining on these red Navajo sandstone cliffs, and they're just on fire. So highly recommend this drive up to the north side of the Grand Canyon, and then come down and head toward Marble Canyon, Lee's Ferry, and the Colorado River. It's absolutely spectacular for anyone that gets the chance to see all of this.
It's still cloudy, but you can see how pretty those red cliffs there along to the east of us are.
Yeah, it's actually much prettier when the sun is shining on it. So afternoons, late afternoons, the sun is shining on those cliffs, and they're just spectacular.
Maybe on our way home the sun will shine on it. We'll have to see.
Well, it depends on how much clouds, since the storm is rolling in.
That's true. And then this is off to our west, mountains we came out of.
Okay. We're coming up to an area along the highway called Vermilion Cliffs. And I don't know how well the video picks it up, but these are just really, really red Navajo sandstone with some white bands. They're very, very pretty, and that's where they get the name Vermilion Cliffs from. They've got some cliff dwelling facilities up here for the native people have built, and also Vermilion Cliffs is a good place if you want to watch the condors, because they have been releasing the condors out here in Vermilion Cliffs.
Sorry. Right in your way.
So yeah, it's quite a neat place. And, for anyone that's a pilot, there's a nice little landing strip out here at Vermilion Cliffs, and they've got a little restaurant out here, and quite a few of the local pilots will fly out to Vermilion Cliffs to have a breakfast. You can land right at the little runway and walk across the street and go have a meal. So if you like the outback flying, this is outback flying with actually a gravel runway that's not too bad.
And there again, if the sun were shining on the cliffs, they would be much more intensely colored. But with the clouds, you don't see them as much.
Yeah, this is not one of our brighter days for this, but I'll be honest with you, it's having the cloud cover is nice because it's just kind of very, very even tones, and if you do a lot of photography like I do, you can actually work with this a little bit, which is kind of fun to work with this subdued lighting. This is a little motel here at Vermilion Cliffs, and the runway is just another couple miles down the road, what they call Marble Canyon, but it's all basically it's the same range of cliffs that are beautiful and spectacular. And it does get a little warm out here in the summertime. A little bit. It'll go over 100. Again, so when you're traveling these kinds of areas, there's oftentimes not a lot of traffic out here, and especially if you get off on some of the more primitive dirt roads, you really need to be prepared. You need to have sufficient food, sufficient water, blankets, tools, whatever kind of emergency that you might run into, you need to be prepared for. There's not a lot of help out here. I would imagine that this is patrolled maybe once a day at the most by law enforcement, so there's not a lot of rescue opportunities out here. Most times if somebody gets hurt out in this area, they life flight them either up to Page, Arizona, or St. George, Utah, or Cedar City, Utah. So this is a long way, and so you want to certainly be careful. It's beautiful, but please don't take any chances. Okay, we are turning into Lee's Ferry. You can point the sign here. Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. And it's right here as part of the Marble Canyon area. And this is really a very underappreciated national monument. They don't get a lot of visitation out here. And this will take us right down to Lee's Ferry and the Colorado River. Beautiful, beautiful, like I said, Navajo Sandstone mountains around us that are cliffs that are beautiful. There's some hoodoos out here, which is kind of rock formations so that they stand by themselves out here in the area. And I would highly recommend that if you get a chance, the BLM does a winter bird count festival every winter, and this is the second year they've held it here at the Lee's Ferry area. And we were here last year. I was the keynote speaker doing my Birds of Prey program, and they invited me to come back again. So it's really well worth the drive to come down through here. You see the cliffs are just amazing. And during their bird count festival, they actually have pontoon boats that launch from the Lee's Ferry launch site here where we're going to go to, and they motor up the Colorado River and count birds. So if you're an avid bird watcher, this is a great opportunity to come and get to see a lot of the migrating, especially waterfowl, but all sorts of birds. This is a place that you can watch for condors, you can watch for eagles, you can watch for peregrine falcons. It really is, for birders, this is a wonderland. And because they have it in December, the festival, it's a nice winter wonderland where, generally speaking, there isn't any snow, and the roads are very accessible.
Interesting rock formation.
Yeah. The only issue that you have is if you come from where we came from Cedar City, there's a couple of mountain ranges that you have to cross to get here.
Look at these hoodoos.
Yeah, you can see the hoodoos. I'll pull over so you can see them just a little bit, since nobody's behind us. That's called a hoodoo, and it's a freestanding rock formation that erosion has grounded away. The top part of the hoodoo is a little more dense, harder rock. The lower part is softer rock. So the softer rock ends up dissolving and eroding away, and eventually that big boulder that's sitting on top will eventually fall over, but that takes thousands and thousands of years to do that. So we get a lot of these kinds of structures throughout southern Arizona and or southern Utah, northern Arizona. Just really kind of fun to see, and it's just right off the road where you can see it quite easily.
Look at the mountains there just beyond. I don't know if you can see the colors.
Yeah, deep reds, a little bit of
Reds, whites, a little bit of black.
And so these beautiful, beautiful sandstone cliffs are just absolutely surrounding you as you drive down into the Lee's Ferry recreational area. So it really is quite beautiful. You know, it's well worth the drive, and it's a nice backdrop for me to do one of my wildlife shows. And there's the Colorado River. And so that's the mighty Colorado. Again, they run a lot of whitewater rafting trips down the Colorado through this area, down from Glen Canyon Dam all the way down to Lake Mead. They have camping trips, and for the Winter Bird Festival, they use little inflatable pontoon boats to run people up the river to count migratory wildlife, specifically migratory birds. And so it's really a unique and kind of neat place to do a little bird watching.
Looks like they have picnic and camping spots here.
They do have campgrounds. They do have picnic areas.
As the sign says.
Yes.
River Drive. Guess you can take either way to get there, huh?
Well, the river drive takes you down to the river, but we have to go to the boat launch.
Ah, okay. There's
Where we're headed.
More of the river.
And this is actually the Perea River, and this comes down from Utah, actually quite a ways up over by Escalante in Utah, and this is where the Perea River ends up joining the Colorado. And so this is the junction point for the two rivers to come together.
Wire across the river?
Yep. Let's take a chair across. Get people across it. They need to.
Looks like we're here.
We are here. Okay, we have arrived. This is the Colorado River. This is the Lee's Ferry launch area. And we've got I can see some plum heads and some mallards and all sorts of waterfowl out there. And we've got a bunch of people here for the festival, and so we have arrived, and we'll go ahead and get set up for our show. So this is our little trip out to Lee's Ferry. My name is Martin Kleiner. I'm a master falconer. I'm an eagle falconer. I'm a raptor rehabilitator, raptor educator, raptor propagator. I was the curator of birds of prey at Busch Gardens in California for many years. I worked in the movie and television industry training big cats, elephants, bears, sea lions, all that kind of ridiculous stuff. And I am the founder and CEO of the Southwest Wildlife Foundation. That is our wildlife rescue organization out of Cedar City, Utah. And they've asked me to bring some of my friends with me today, so I brought 3 actually native Arizona birds of prey, even though these are not necessarily from Arizona, but you do have them here. I have brought a Harris hawk, a Peregrine Falcon, and a golden eagle. And so we're going to have a little bit of fun here. What we'll do is I'll tell you, bring you the birds out one at a time, tell you all about them, and then ask if anybody has questions. And if you have questions, just raise your hand. I'll be glad to call on you and answer whatever questions that you possibly have. Now, there's a difference between raising your hand and waving your arm. Okay? Since these are wild animals, lots of movement frightens them. Does that make sense, guys? So if you have a question, just raise your hand. Don't wave your arms around, because that makes the birds very, very nervous. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Yes, Scott, we'll get to you in a minute.
So the birds won't hurt you?
They can hurt me, yes.
That's why you put the gloves on.
Hey, pretty girl. Come on, sweetie. Okay, isn't she beautiful?
Uh-huh.
Now, this is a Harris hawk. Her name is Belle. Say hi to everybody, Belle. And Bella's a really great example of a hawk. Now, this bird did not come from the wild. This bird actually came from a captive breeding program down in Louisiana. So she's not from the wild, even though the Harris hawk is native to southern Arizona. That's not where she came from. And the reason we call her Belle is because very pretty, sweet young ladies that live in the South, like Louisiana, New Orleans, and those kinds of places, they're oftentimes like these little young ladies right here. If you guys were living in New Orleans, you'd be called Southern Belles. And so she's my little Southern Belle, and it's spelled B-E-L-L-E, so that's where she got her name. Now, the Harris hawk is a really great example of a hawk. And hawks and falcons are very, very different. The first thing you'll notice about this hawk is, look at the feet on this girl. She's got very, very big, thick, very, very powerful feet. And that's what she kills with. See, the hawk basically grabs its quarry and crushes it with the power of its feet. So she's got very large talons and very, very big, powerful feet. Now she has long legs. I know, you're just going to sleep, aren't you? She's got pretty long legs because she catches all of her food on the ground. And so she catches squirrels and rabbits and chipmunks and gophers and jackrabbits and those kinds of things. And so she catches mostly everything on the ground. And in bushes like this, so she has to reach through the bushes to grab the food that she's trying to catch. So she has longer legs. Now the hawk has broad, rounded wings. You can see her beautiful, broad, rounded wings. And she's kind of a sprint bird, which basically means if a rabbit takes off running, she has to catch that rabbit at about the first 100 yards, or the rabbit will outdistance her. So they're very quick, but only for a short distance. And then the hawk has got this big, beautiful tail. Now this tail is what she steers with, so she can zigzag in and out around bushes. And look how much this tail moves. You kind of wind her up in the morning to get her started. So she's got a very maneuverable tail, and that makes her very, very agile. It makes her a very, very efficient hunter. And so she is an efficient hunter. Her favorite thing to hunt is jackrabbits. And she has actually caught 68 rabbits so far this year. And the nice thing is she catches the rabbits, is she gets to eat her share, and then we bring the rest of the rabbit home as food for the injured eagles and hawks and falcons and owls that I care for. So she helps provide food for the injured wildlife.
That's cute.
Now, this is a Harris hawk, and she is a year and a half old. But I had a Harris hawk just like this one many, many years ago. See, I grew up in California. And I've been rescuing these guys for over 50 years. So many years ago in California, I had a female Harris hawk, and she had kind of a sad story. She had been stolen from her nest by some teenage boys. Now that's really bad. Because a hawk raised by humans, raised by man, has no fear of man. And a hawk raised by man with no fear of man, they can be really dangerous. And that's because they have no fear of you. If they have no fear of you, if they get mad at you for any reason, they will hurt you. Where a wild hawk, if it gets mad at you, it flies away. And so it's really bad to steal these from the wild and try to raise them, especially if you don't know how to do it properly. And so I had this big, big female Harris hawk just like this one, stolen from the nest by some teenage boys, raised badly, was imprinted. She was dangerous. She was also horribly abused. She ended up with a broken leg. That's when she came to me, because I'm the guy that rescues the critters. And I've been rescuing them for over 50 years. Well, I could fix her broken leg. But the thing I couldn't fix is the emotional scars in her head that she lived with for the rest of her life. That hawk was so emotionally disturbed, its favorite thing to hunt was cows. Cows. We would go out on the desert, and if there was a cow within a mile, she had to go beat up a cow. She attacked horses. She attacked people jogging. She attacked a farmer on his tractor. Okay, she had issues. Now, we could not put her back in the wild because she'd hurt people. So she stayed with me for the rest of her life as one of my wildlife ambassadors and one of my falconry birds, and she and I got along really, really well together. Well, in my hometown where I grew up in Southern California, but it was a really, really small community, and it was a farming town. They grew oranges there. I grew up in the middle of an orange grove. And in my small town, everybody knew everybody. Everybody was friends. And if you wanted to borrow somebody's car or somebody's pickup truck, you could just call them on the phone and says, hey, can I borrow your truck? And your friend would say, sure. The keys are on the floor of the truck. Some of you older folks might remember those days when you just leave your keys on the floor of your car. You didn't have to worry about it. We can't do that anymore. And so I used to always leave my keys on the floor of my car. So if anybody needed the car, the keys were there. Well, one day I had my hawk and I took my hawk out chasing rabbits. So we took the hawk out to the field, let her chase some rabbits, and on our way home, I stopped at the local gas station to buy something to drink. And so I walked into the store and I bought a soda pop. As I came walking out of the store, I heard somebody screaming. And I looked over, and this guy is bailing out of my car. You see, my hawk just used to sit on a perch in the back seat of the car. So I went running over to my car. My hawk is on the ground next to the car, so I pick up my hawk, I put her back on her perch on the back seat of the car, and I noticed that my keys had been picked up off the floor and put in the ignition. He tried to steal my car. Now, I don't know if he saw the hawk, didn't see the hawk, saw the hawk and thought it was stuffed. I have no idea what was going through his mind. But can you imagine, you jump into a strange car, grab the keys off the floor, put them in the ignition, having 8 razor-sharp talons puncturing the back of your neck, wings beating, and the most awful growl you've ever heard. There were quarter-sized drops of blood going down the street. I know he needed stitches. Going to assume that's the last car he ever tried to steal. My hawk got the nickname my feathered Doberman Pinscher. Well, like I said, I've been rescuing these guys for over 50 years. That's a long time. And my sweet wife, Susan, this February, we will celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary. Yeah, she deserves applause for that. She really does. I can't imagine anybody that would put up with me for over 40 years than this sweet young lady. Our very first date, I took her hunting with that hawk. I'm a romantic kind of guy. So we get out to the field. I get the hawk out of the car onto my glove, and as my then girlfriend, but now wife, approached, my hawk turned around and faced her and growled violently at her. And then my hawk turned back around facing me, lifted its tail, and pooped on her. That was our first date. She married me anyway, it's her fault. Well, my wife and I have written a book. If you guys like animal stories, now I can't sell them to you here, but if you want, you can go to our website and buy them. But if you like animal stories, this is 40 Years of Wildlife Rescue Stories and the Wisdom of Grandparents. This is a great book as a family read. The eagle that's on the front cover here, you'll get to meet that eagle in a few minutes. I brought him with me, and my eagle has autographed the book. If I get it to open up here. There we go. That's my eagle's footprint. And so it's the only book in the world autographed by a wild eagle.
Wow.
And when you order it off our website, the profits go to our Wildlife Rescue Center to help us feed the animals. So it goes to a good cause. Well, in the process of writing our book, I told my wife Susan, I said, you know, we need to put the story of the old Harris hawk in the book. And my wife Susan says, well, if you're going to tell everybody about our first date, you have to tell everybody about the rest of our first date. And I says, no, the story's funnier where I end the story where you get pooped on. And she says, no, you have to tell everybody about the rest of our first date. And I says, well, Susan, if you want to tell everybody about the rest of our first date, you have to write the story. So she did. And so if you want to learn about the rest of our first date and why that sweet young lady married me, you got to read the book. And like I said, I can't tell them to you here today, but you can go to the website. Though I did bring a whole bunch of flyers that you can have. And this has our website and our contact information and our YouTube channel, so you can see all the videos of the animals that we care for. Hawk questions that I can answer for anyone. Here's your chance to ask virtually anything of a master falconer about hawks. Yes, sir.
How many parts of the wings are there?
How many parts of the wings are there?
Yeah, when you expand the wing out.
Well, this one's wingspan from tip to tip is about 3 feet. Now, if you're counting all the bones and all the feathers, you know, he's got thousands of feathers, so I don't know.
Because in, I'm sorry, in 4-H shares 7 parts of the wing, the birds, if you expand the wing out, and you get like.
Oh, you're still talking about the individual joint?
Yeah.
Yeah, the individual joint. But if you say parts, that means feathers and everything else.
Yeah.
So there would be literally hundreds and hundreds of parts. Because like I said, with all of the different feathers, there's lots of parts that makes up a bird's wing. Yes?
How big can they get?
Well, actually, this is as big as the Harris hawk gets. Now, this is a female. And the way we can tell it's a female, in all birds of prey, the females are a third bigger than the boys. And the girls are a third stronger than the boys. But the boys are a third quicker than the girls. Now, there's a reason for that. And I'm sure all the boys here will agree with me. The reason the boys have to be a third quicker is because girls are mean. And boys have got to be quick to get away from them. See, everybody's not in their head. So we know that. Yes, miss?
How old was the hawk when you got her?
How old was she when I got her? Well, again, she was raised, the breeder in Louisiana had her mom and dad, but I got her at about 4.5, 5 months old. So she was full grown. Now, this hawk is as big as they'll ever get, 9 weeks old.
Dang.
A hawk, falcon, eagle, owl, as big as they're going to get, somewhere between 6, depending if it's a really small hawk or falcon, to if it's a big eagle, about 12 weeks. How would you kids like to be as big as your mom and dad when you're 9 weeks old? Would you like that?
Yeah.
Would that be cool? Well, actually, no, that would be really embarrassing. For 9 weeks, you would run around the house with no clothes on. And the reason for that is because that you grow so fast that if you grew as fast as this hawk grows, your mom and dad would take you to the store to buy you a brand new pair of shoes. You walk in the store, you try on a pair of shoes that fit, you say that's good, you walk up to the counter, you pay for it, you walk out the door, you'd have to turn right back around and walk back into the store and buy another new pair of shoes because you would have just outgrown the pair that you just bought. That is how fast they grow. Now, because they grow so fast, they eat a lot of food. That supports their growth. And so it's really hard for mom and dad to care for these guys because these babies eat tons and tons of food. Yes, sir?
How strong can they get?
How strong can they? Well, it depends on what you mean by strong. Now, her feet are very, very powerful, and her feet are strong enough that she can actually catch a rabbit 4 times bigger than she is. Now, if you say strong, like carry it, like pick it up and fly with it, no. This hawk can carry about a third, instead of 4 times her weight, about a third of her weight into flight. So she can carry a little tiny chipmunk, but she can catch a jackrabbit. Does that make sense? So there's different kinds of strong. You had a question, sir?
How many feathers are in her tail?
How many feathers in a tail? On average, a raptor has 12 tail feathers. Now they do drop feathers and grow new ones, and sometimes they have less. But on average, it's 12 tail feathers.
Yeah.
Any hawk questions? Other hawk? Yes.
How fast do they fly? Did you answer that already?
Well, the Harris hawk and most hawks are not super fast like a falcon. They're quick. And so basically leaving my glove to chase a rabbit over a short distance, she's actually faster than a falcon. But a falcon in a dive is significantly faster. So this hawk's fastest it could ever possibly go is about 70 miles an hour. That's not too bad, 70 miles an hour.
That's pretty good.
But the falcon is actually much, much faster. You know that? Yes.
How many species of hawk are there?
Well, if you consider worldwide, there are several hundred. Basically, in this particular area, we've got about 10 different species of hawk. And that's if you throw the northern harrier into that group as well. Yes, sir?
What's the biggest thing she's ever caught?
The biggest thing that she has ever caught personally is a jackrabbit that weighed 8 pounds.
Dang.
Now this hawk weighs about 2 pounds. So she caught a jackrabbit 4 times bigger than she is. So that's pretty good.
That's cute.
Okay, any other hawk questions before we bring out the falcon? You about done, sweetie? Huh? Now this is called a hood, and their eyesight's really, really good. And a lot of movement drives them nuts. You know, this is why when you see horses in the cities, they have blinders on to keep all that movement, peripheral movement, from frightening them. Well, that's what this is for. So when we transport in the car, or there's too much movement and activity, I can put this over her eyes, just like that. And now she can't see.
This is a ring?
Look at you. Put this full. Now she can't see, and she can kind of relax and say, "Oh, thank goodness, I don't have to look at all these people anymore." So that's her stress protection. So that's what we use those for. Let's get her put back and bring out the falcon. Now remember the hawk. Big feet, thick toes, longer legs, longer tail, round wings. Falcons are different. Hey, pretty girl. Isn't she beautiful? Now this is the peregrine falcon. This is the endangered species you guys have heard so much about. This is the animal that has actually, it saved your lives. Now, all of you are here, and I'm so glad that you guys are here, because you're helping us do something very, very important. You're helping us monitor the different kinds of migratory wildlife that comes through. And that's an extremely important job that we need to do, and the peregrine falcon actually taught us about that. You see, in the 1960s, when I was the age of you guys, I grew up in the middle of an orange grove. And they used to drive through the orange groves with a spray truck, and they would spray the orange trees with a pesticide to kill bugs. And the pesticide was called DDT. Okay? Now, DDT, I know, sweetie, DDT was the safest pesticide in the world. We all knew it was safe. In fact, as us kids would go playing through the orange groves and the orange trees, yes, sweetie, I know, playing through the orange groves and the orange trees, we'd come home covered in DDT. But it was fine, it was safe. Everybody knew it was safe. When we go swimming at the local community swimming pool, they would spray DDT over us kids at the swimming pool to kill mosquito larvae in the swimming pool. DDT was safe. We knew it was safe. Everybody knew that. Well, in the late 1960s, all of a sudden, the peregrine falcon, this bird right here, her population started to crash really badly. And because her population started to crash really badly, you know, we were trying to figure out what went wrong. Something's wrong. The peregrine falcon's nest that we knew about, their eggs weren't hatching. In fact, they were breaking. And we're watching the peregrine's population die really badly. And here's what we discovered. They would spray for insects with the DDT, which kill bugs, and the small birds would eat the bugs, and the peregrine falcon would eat the small birds. So just like you and I, the peregrine falcon, the golden eagle, and all of these other predatory birds, they're at the top of the food chain, just like you and I are at the top of the food chain. What affects them affects us. And what they discovered is the higher up the food chain you go, like us, DDT would concentrate in our bodies, and the peregrine falcon wasn't able to assimilate the calcium necessary, and their eggs were really thin, and they couldn't hatch them. And so the peregrine falcons were all going extinct. Well, these are what we call barometer species. They tell us how the environment is doing. Just like many years ago, miners would take a cage full of birds when they go down into the mines to work. And they just leave the cage full of birds in the mine, and they would every once in a while look over the cage of birds, and if the birds were dead, they would get out of the mine really fast because there was poison gas in the mine. Does that make sense? And so even though the birds would die, the birds would tell the miners that there's poison gas and they need to leave the mine quickly or they're going to die too. Well, these animals, the hawks, the eagles, and the falcons, and all the birds that you see here today, these animals tell us how our environment is doing. It's okay, sweetie. She hasn't had her breakfast yet, so she's a little bouncy. So they tell us how our environment is doing, and what kills them kills us. But it kills them first. Does that make sense? And so all of a sudden the peregrine falcon's population starts to die. If we would have continued using the pesticides in a bad way, pesticides aren't bad, but we use them in a bad way. And if we would have continued using the pesticides in a really bad way, my children and my grandchildren would have been born with severe birth defects. Okay? This is why we count them. This is why we want to know how many birds are coming through. This is why it's so important. Because as we watch the populations of these beautiful animals migrate through, and if all of a sudden, oh my goodness sakes, we're not seeing any, like the northern harrier that just flew by. What's wrong with the northern harriers? Well, something in the environment is causing a problem with the northern harriers, and what affects them is going to affect us. So if we do something to hurt the northern harrier, or we do something to hurt the bald eagles, or we do something to hurt, the wildlife that we have here, it is eventually going to hurt us too. Does that make sense, guys? So that is the reason that we come here. And that is the reason we do these bird counts, so that we have that data, that information, to help save our lives, because they will tell us. Well, falcons, like I said, very, very different than the eagle. The first thing you'll notice is the feet. Look at these feet. Now she has long, skinny toes instead of the thick, powerful toes. Though she has razor-sharp claws, the toes are long and skinny. They're not as strong as the hawk. And so she actually has to hit the animals that she's hunting in a dive. Now, she's not going to hunt rabbits on the ground, because you hit a rabbit on the ground and you're going 200 miles an hour.
And you miss.
Because she can go 200 miles an hour in a dive. You hit a rabbit at 200 miles an hour, even if you hit the rabbit, you're going to hit the ground. Does that make sense? So she's hunting birds, like these ducks out here. She hunts other birds. And she hits them in the air. Now she's not strong enough to kill a duck on the ground all by herself. But if she hits the duck at 200 miles an hour, and what she'll do is at 200 miles an hour, just before you hit the duck, she takes her feet, she rolls them up in a fist, and she leaves the back claw open, and she hits and rips at 200 miles an hour, breaking backs, breaking necks, breaking wings, disabling the ducks. The ducks fall to the ground, and then she flies down, and then she finishes them off and eats them on the ground. Does that make sense? So that's how she hunts. So she's built very, very differently. So because of the way she hunts, she doesn't have the strength in her feet like the hawk does. The toes are longer and thinner. Look how short her legs are. If she had long legs like the hawk has, hitting a duck or a pheasant at 200 miles an hour, her legs would break. So she has much shorter legs, so they're much stronger. Now her wings, as you can see, are pointed. And so she has these beautiful pointed wings. And again, that allows her to fly incredibly fast. And the tail is much, much smaller and much stiffer and doesn't move around, not nearly as much as the hawk's tail does. But she doesn't need as big a tail because she's not zigzagging in and out of bushes trying to catch rabbits. So she's hitting things in the air, so she doesn't need as big a tail. Now, hawks have different color eyes depending on the kind of hawk. My Harris hawk has brown eyes. But hawks can have brown eyes, they can have blue eyes, they can have gray eyes. They can have yellow eyes, orange eyes, or red eyes, depending on the kind of hawk. All falcons have black eyes. And so if you see a bird of prey that have dark, dark black eyes, it's a falcon. All falcons have black eyes. All falcons have a stripe come below the eye. And my peregrine's very much that way, though she has a really thick stripe coming down below her eye. And her thick stripe actually covers her whole head. We call that a helmet. But yes, she has very, very dark eyes. Now, this little gal right here, again, out of a captive breeding program, she's not from the wild, but she has a problem. And this is one of the reasons she's being a little bit bouncy. She hasn't had her breakfast, and she doesn't understand. She's almost blind. Out of the captive breeding program, the breeder recognized that there was something wrong with this little falcon. She was just a little tiny chick. There was something wrong with her because all the other chicks in the chamber, mom and dad come flying back up with food, and all the other chicks would run to mom and dad, and she'd hear the other chicks screaming, and she'd run into the wall. She couldn't see. She can see it just a few feet, just about that much, but she can't see very far. And so she can see light, she can see movement, but she can't see well enough. And so the breeder called me on the phone and asked, he says, I've got this Peregrine Falcon. She's almost blind. She can't be released back to the wild. She can't be used for falconry. And by federal law, I'm going to have to euthanize her. Can you help? Because I rescue them and I do educational programs. And I says, well, I don't, I've got 2 other falcons. I don't need a third. And he says, well, I guess I'm just going to have to euthanize her. And I says, no, bring her over. I'm a softie. And so they brought her over, and she's very pretty, and other than she can't see very well, she's very healthy. And so she's been a really good little wildlife ambassador to take and do wildlife programs with. Other than, she said she's hungry. She gets breakfast every morning, and we left before breakfast, so she didn't get her breakfast yet today. So that's why she's a little on the bouncy side. Now the falcon's name is Helen.
Hi, Helen.
This is Helen.
Helen Keller.
Very good, just like Helen Keller. Helen Keller was a very, very smart young lady who was both blind and deaf. And she became a wonderful ambassador for the disabled. And so this is our little blind Helen, and she's a wonderful ambassador for wildlife. So that's why we named her Helen. Falcon questions that I can answer for you. Yes, sir.
What do you want? Wait, no, never mind. I forgot
Okay.
what I was.
Yes, miss.
Do you know any of her brothers or sisters?
I do know her other brothers and sisters, and they're all fine. They're not blind like she is. And again, she's not completely blind. She sees movement. That's why I don't have a hood for her, because a hood doesn't matter. She can't see well enough that that's an issue. But, she does. They get very used to a routine, and she doesn't understand why this morning I picked her up, put her in a transport box, and drove for 3.5 hours instead of feeding her breakfast. So she's a little bouncy, wondering what's going on. You had a question, sir?
Why does she have speckles?
Why does she have speckles? Well, that's just the way God made them. That's just her color, and this is her adult color, and this is the Untitled Peregrine. This is the endangered species that lives right here. In fact, what's really kind of interesting is we have Untitled Peregrines found around the western United States, but the ones that we have here in northern Arizona and southern Utah, their breast, instead of white, is more reddish. And I think that's a little genetic change from what most of the Untitled Peregrines are, because they're a little more whitish on the breast with the speckles. Because we have this beautiful red Navajo Sandstone. And I think that they have adapted to that color to be a little better camouflage. Does that make sense? And so the vast majority of the Untitled Peregrines that we see here have kind of the light reddish breasts, which is kind of interesting. Yes?
How much do they eat a day?
How much do they eat a day? Well, this little gal eats basically a whole quail or about a half a pigeon a day. So they eat quite a bit. But because she eats birds, we feed her a lot of birds.
Just that.
Any other falcon questions before I bring out the eagle? Yes, sir.
Since you're saying that she eats a lot of birds, have you ever fed her chicken?
Well, here's the problem with domestic foods. Domestic chicken has very, very little nutritional value to it as compared to wild foods. And so quail, in fact, we are at our wildlife rescue center, because we feed so many sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife, we have to order in thousands of frozen rats, mice, and quail, and they're Caternic quail, that we thaw and feed to these animals. And then they do get a chance to, like I said, she doesn't because she can't see well enough to hunt. But the hawk and my eagle get a chance to go hunting and catch wild rabbits and wild quarry. And again, the wild quarry is far more nutritious And in fact, that's why, you know, you go to the grocery store and buy hamburger. I mean, that's perfectly fine, but elk steak or venison steak is much better for you. Does that make sense? And so we want to make sure that they get a good diet of appropriately healthy foods. So no, I don't feed them chicken. Last questions before we put her back and bring up the eagle? I think you're done, sweetie. And we'll get you home and get you some breakfast. It'll be dinner time.
What's that white thing on the floor?
That's her poop.
She pooped.
Okay.
She came out at you.
Now here's how it works. I like actually, this is the kind of glove I usually use for the hawks. And the hawk and falcon, their feet are different, so I use different kinds of gloves. And this is the glove I like to use for the hawks. And it's very soft, and it's elk skin, so it's very comfortable. And I like to make my own. And when I make my own, you know, they fit me like a glove, which is very nice. My sweet wife Susan, she gets very nervous when I handle eagles. Eagles are incredibly dangerous to work with. They're very powerful, and their feet are deadly. And so when she sees an eagle sitting in my arm with a foot here and a foot here, it bothers her. And so my wife Susan went out and got me an eagle falconry glove that was commercially made. Now this is an eagle falconry glove. Now it's cowhide, and it is stiff, and it is uncomfortable. And as you can see how wonderful it fits me. Okay. But you know, I have been married for over 41 years. And I learned a long time ago that when your wife buys you a present, you use it. I'm a very smart man. And so that's why I changed gloves, because they have different kinds of feet, and the gloves is actually for the bird's comfort far more than for my safety. Now, here's rule number 1, guys. Never stick your head in a box with a wild eagle.
No.
Don't do that. I have to, but, you know, don't. Because these can be very, very dangerous animals.
Don't do that. Don't do this at home, kids. It can tear your face off. Whoa!
I know, Scout.
Whoa!
There's my boy.
Whoa!
Okay. Get comfy. Get comfy, big guy. That's my boy. He's a good baby. Now this is a golden eagle. He is 17 years old. He's full grown, and he is wild. A farmer up in Wyoming was threatening to shoot him, and I was called in by the federal government to go rescue him before he got shot. So this is a full-grown wild eagle. And let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Shall we show them those beautiful feet? Look at these things. Okay, 600 pounds per square inch of crushing power in those feet. He can drive those talons through my glove and crush the bones of my hand. It's really good. He likes me. We do appreciate that. My eagle has over 7,000 feathers. 7,000. Now feathers are very, very lightweight. And so all 7,000 feathers only weigh, hurry up, thank you. All 7,000 feathers weigh about 2 pounds in weight. So they're very, very light. Of course, the bones of birds or bones are hollow, so their entire skeletal structure, again, only about 2 pounds in weight. Yet there's a portion of my eagle's body that represents half his total body weight, and that's the large chest muscles right here, the pectoral muscles. And those muscles are the motors that he uses to drive that beautiful 6-foot wingspan that allows eagles to fly where hawks and falcons cannot. Where eagles have been spotted at altitudes greater than 30,000 feet. And this eagle can comfortably soar in a 40-mile-an-hour wind, which would ground a hawk or a falcon. And of course, the eyesight of an eagle is legendary. Let me tell you truly how well an eagle can see. Here is an 8-pound creature. He weighs 8 pounds. This 8-pound creature has eyes larger than yours. Not only is his eyes larger, my eagle can see approximately 8 times further than you can. But you and I, we get a pair of binoculars, we can see 8 times further. Well, not only can he see 8 times further, he has 6 times the number of light-sensitive cells in the back of the eye called rods and cones. Everything an eagle sees is 6 times clearer. This eagle can spot a jackrabbit 5 miles away. And he does. You see, I am the first person in North America licensed to trap and train a wild eagle for falconry. And so this eagle and I go out on the desert. All of this comes off, we turn him loose. He flies free. He goes thousands of feet in the sky. He soars the ridges out north of Cedar City. He'll go thousands of feet in the sky. And when my eagle's up soaring the ridges, I look up in the sky, I see 2 or 3 eagles soaring the ridges north of town. And you always have to wonder what the eagles are talking about. To see my eagle kind of cruising with his friends, I can see my eagle looking over his buddies to say, watch this. I have a trained human. All I have to do is drift out over that guy's head, and he'll run out to the desert with a stick, hitting bushes, flushing out rabbits for me to catch. And I will. Now, if there are no rabbits to be found and it's time to go home, I can blow my whistle and my eagle will fly back and land on my glove for food. Or I have his toy. His toy is a leather sack, we call it a lure, and we tie food on the leather sack, and I can blow my whistle, throw his toy out on the ground, and my eagle will go into a wonderful dive, headlong, vertical, about 145 miles an hour, and he will kill the leather sack, which is convenient. One day my eagle got a little confused. Thousands of feet in the sky. No rabbits to be found. It was time to go home. So I blew my whistle, threw his toy out on the ground, and my eagle went into a wonderful dive. Headlong, vertical, 145 miles an hour. It was impressive. But it became apparent very quickly. He wasn't coming to kill the toy. He was coming for my arm. When I woke up, I was 6 feet back, laying face down in the dirt, with my eagle standing next to me, looking down at me to say, "Why are you laying there?"
That's what my dog does when I'm laying on the couch.
I had a long talk with my eagle that day, how I cannot withstand the impact of an 8-pound bird at 145 miles an hour, and I would appreciate it if you never do that again. He dislocated my shoulder and damaged my back and knees. But that experience has given me knowledge. I have a knowledge that none of you have. I have an absolute knowledge of exactly what is going through the mind of a jackrabbit just before an eagle kills it. I don't recommend it, but it's mine. Eagle questions. I know. You hadn't had your breakfast yet either. That's okay. Yes, sir?
Why does he have such a large wingspan?
Why does he have such a large wingspan? Because he's such a large bird.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's very, very simple. Now, please understand, the farmer felt it was a threat to his livestock. Old wives' tales die very hard. There are farmers that believe that eagles swoop down, carry off sheep, cows, and children.
Just that.
Okay? This is an 8-pound creature. This guy is capable of carrying 1/3 of his body weight into flight. That's it, 1/3. 8 pounds, about 1/3, 2.5 pounds. He can carry approximately 2.5 pounds of weight into flight. The average weight of a newborn lamb is 11 pounds. If he can't carry 2.5, he's not going to carry 11. And if there's a mother who's out in the desert with a child that weighs less than 2.5 pounds, she should be arrested. So are they a threat to us and to our livestock? No. They're primarily a scavenger. They're looking for the easiest meal, and the vast majority of times, not always, but the vast majority of times, when eagles are accused of killing livestock, it's because something else killed the livestock, and the eagles found the carcass and flew down to feed. And the farmer drives up and says, "Oh, the eagle must have killed it." And he really did. Yes?
How long do the claws get?
How long do the claws get? Well, the back one's the longest, and it's about 4 inches on this particular eagle. Now, this is a male. Again, the females are a third bigger, and so the females can be quite a bit larger than he is. Yes, sir. Yes.
Have you ever seen eagles or any other birds fight with other large birds like ravens?
Well, actually, usually the other way, ravens fight with eagles. Basically, for the most part, the problem that eagles have is they're very big and they're very powerful, but because of their great size and big wings, they're not very maneuverable. And so, on a really good year, this eagle will catch a half a dozen jackrabbits. On a really good year, the hawk will catch 100. The hawk is a much more efficient hunter. Does that make sense? And so the eagles really rely far more on roadkill and scavenging for food than they do rely on hunting because of their huge size. And so the problem that an eagle has is the eagle goes flying along, ravens and even little shrikes and small birds will attack the eagle as he's flying along because they're a lot more maneuverable. And the eagle, is flying along and the birds dive down and pluck feathers off their head. And there's nothing the eagle can do but try to dodge until they get out of the bird's territory. So for the most part, the eagles are the ones being picked on by the smaller birds. Yes?
Okay. Does he ever shed his talons?
Does he ever shed his talons? No. Now there's an old story, it's an old wives' tale about when an eagle hits a certain age, that the eagle loses its talons and all of its feathers fall off, and it goes through this horrific molt. And that is absolutely not true. The talons are the talons for their entire life. Now they do grow, and they do have to be worn down. This is why we have the golden eagle up on the cliff over there sitting on a rock. They sit on rocks and things to help wear their talons down so they don't overgrow. They do grow new feathers every year, where they drop their last year's feathers because feathers are delicate; they break. So they drop feathers and grow new ones every year. But they do that very, very slowly. This eagle takes 6 months or more to basically go finish its molt. So it starts molting. He's just basically finished up his molt. He starts molting about the end of May, and he finishes his molt about the end of November. And through that entire period of time, they're dropping a few feathers, new one grows, and then when those are all grown in, then he drops a few more feathers, and the new one grows. Does that make sense? And so that where your waterfowl that's out here, these guys will drop a ton of feathers where they can't fly for a couple of weeks and then grow new feathers. But with a bird like this, he can't not be able to fly and hunt for a couple of weeks. So they just drop a few feathers and grow new ones. Other eagle questions? Yes?
How long do they live? You said he's 17?
He's 17. If everything goes well in captivity, he'll live more than 40 years. But in the wild, less than half. The wild's a really tough place to make a living for them. So I've 2 weeks ago I released another golden eagle back to the wild. I released a red-tailed hawk last week. I've got another red-tailed hawk that I'll probably release this weekend back to the wild. I've got a white-bellied bald eagle in our rescue center right now that we're currently working on, and a couple more red-tailed hawks. So we rescue a lot. And so it's pretty tough for them out there. This is a tough world for the eagles and the hawks and falcons to survive. Yes?
I'm just curious, on your experience on carcasses, are bald eagles more aggressive, more dominant than goldens, or is it the reverse? Or does it depend?
Well, it really does depend.
Okay.
Now, the bald eagle will congregate in groups.
Yeah, they do.
And in fact, here's kind of a good, if you're looking for at big birds, if you want to know if it's bald eagle or golden eagle, first of all, if it's a group, they're not goldens. Goldens are far more solitary. So if you see a group of 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 big eagles, they're balds. The bald eagle, its legs right here are bare, where the golden eagle we call booted because it has feathers to the top of the foot. And so that's a good way to tell as well. Another thing is if you see an eagle sitting in a tree, golden eagles don't particularly like trees. And so you're far more likely to see a bald eagle sitting in a tree than a golden eagle. Golden eagles prefer open spaces like power lines. You see something up there? Interesting? And so, like I said, he can spot a rabbit 5 miles away, so he can see a little squirrel going across that ridge. So They have very different behaviors. Now, up in the Cedar City area where I live, we have about 50 to 60 bald eagles coming all winter long, and we see them, congregating on carcasses. But, I've got photographs of, 30 eagles in a pile eating on a carcass. And even though Cedar City is prime golden eagle habitat, there's not a single golden eagle there because they don't congregate with the balds. So very, very different.
I did watch once, many years ago in the lake, a bald eagle attack a golden eagle.
Yes, but on the other end of the stick, I've had bald eagles or golden eagles attack balds and balds attack goldens. It depends on who considers it their territory.
Yeah, okay.
Is really more the issue than anything else, or somebody, or who's the hungriest. So they see a carcass down there, and somebody's eating my carcass, and the golden eagle says, "Well, that bald eagle's bigger than I am, but I'm really hungry, and I'm going to drive the bald eagle off," or the other way around. So there's a lot of reasons. Yes, sir.
What habitat do they nest in?
Well, golden eagles love cliffs around the open deserts. And so back this far into the canyon, you could have a golden eagle's nest right in this area, but you'd be a lot more likely to have a golden eagle's nest just outside the canyon, is where you're going to find them, and along the cliffs. And they generally don't like really big cliffs. And the reason for that is, he's catching a rabbit, and he catches a rabbit that weighs 2-3 pounds. It's going to be really hard for him to carry it back to his nest. And so they're going to want to be as close to good, food sources like jackrabbits as they can possibly get. Jackrabbits and prairie dogs and cottontails is what they prefer. Any last eagle questions before we call it a day, guys? Well, thank you so much. If you want, please come up and grab a flyer. Thanks, guys.
Thank you again, Martin Tyner, and all your wonderful birds.
good-sized storm. So hopefully we can get over that mountain before the snow gets too bad.
Quickly the weather can change.
Yeah, it's getting pretty dark up in there, so I think we're going to
Get a little bit of snow
Yeah, I think so. We'll just have to be careful.